because most people are using music for tribal reasons, to identify with. This is our music, you know, we're nerds, we listen to techno, you know, and this is what we like, and this is how we identify our tribe, as opposed to those people there that listen to house music, you know, and so on. And that's kind of where it's at. So that's my pitch for listening to music that might challenge you a little bit more. And by the way, I'm not talking about the words. That's a completely different subject. If you really like some particular musician because, oh man, his lyrics are so deep and profound, well, okay, well that's poetry. That's, you know, the fact is he's draping his poetry perhaps on some poor music, and I know the reason why, and I'm sure you do too. Why did Homer sing his epic rather than recite his epics? Because music is a great mnemonic. So perhaps Bob Dylan and his ilk drape their poetry over simple music because it helps them to remember their poems. It's easier to give a concert and remember all the music to sing in your concert than it is to go out and recite all your poems by memory. It is. People do that. So that's why I've been interested in sound all along that path, an evolutionary path, a biological path, a neurological path, a physical path, etc. When I listen to sound, I realize that that sound is being produced by something, and I'm interested in how the particular waveforms it sets up are produced and why they have a certain effect on me. I'm interested in the fact that when I hear sound, it's also profoundly affected by the environment that I'm in. You know, most of my earliest studies in the physics of sound assumed free field environments, and you know that doesn't happen in my world. You know, we play in concert halls for the most part. I did play in marching band, but even that's not a free field environment, you know, because of those generally large container that they put the marching band in, and the funny echoes and the staircase effects and etc. But that is also of interest to me. As a musician, as an ex-performer, I realized that, gee, I could practice all day and sound really, really good, but if I'm playing in a bad hall, it's not going to sound very good. So then, what distinguishes a good hall from a bad hall? Architecturally, dimensionally, all the factors that come into play. And then all of this, of course, is way, way, way before we ever get to such topics as style and technique and the history of Western music and all these things. That's so far up here. That's what I practice, but it's really what I preach because it's so subjective. Everything I do is subjective, but I've always wanted to find some kind of order and objective system of measurement. It's very difficult to do. I also find that my colleagues resist it very much. Even though musicians have a natural rapport for abstract thought, symbology, and mathematics, most of them deny it, don't know it, and act afraid of it, and therefore are also mistrustful of it because they are, if nothing else, human beings, and they tend to mistrust that which they do not understand. Like, if you don't understand music, you might be mistrusting me right now. Okay, so there's my preamble. I'm interested in all aspects of sound, including the purely physical, because I had to give up a science career for music because it just became apparent that I wouldn't be happy unless that's what I did. And so I did. And I'm not unhappy that I did that, but I have not lost the same thing that motivates you guys. You know, that quest for knowledge, for understanding, for finding some way of imposing order on the world. I don't know if that's not, if physicists don't like to talk about that anymore, you know, but I know that it bothered Einstein a lot, you know, that he couldn't find, you know, the big pattern in which everything would fall and so on. That probably fell out of vogue for a while when we started getting into quantum mechanics and thinking in 13 dimensions for strings and so on, but I think it's a motivating impulse for people such as yourself, whether or not that's a fashionable thought. You like quantifying things, you like understanding things. I do too. But I also like writing things that are ineluctable. And there's that dichotomy, I think, that ultimately makes an artist. You know, music expresses nothing, no matter what people say. You know, if you hear the opening of Daphnis and Chloe's suite, the ballet, which is supposed to sound like water, and everybody goes, oh, that sounds like water. No, it doesn't. It sounds like flutes and clarinets playing scales. Water does not sound like that. That's a convention. Over a couple hundred years, we said, okay, well, that sounds like water. It's not. It's representing water. We accepted the representation, and now when we hear, we say, oh, it sounds like water. It doesn't. I've never heard water in my life. If we went to a babbling brook, and it sounded like flutes and clarinets, it would freak us out. Music tries, perhaps, to be explicit, but it can't be. It's ultimately, by far, the most abstract of all of our arts. When you think about it, we're making sounds. Music is probably just the packeting of time through the use of sound. That's the only definition I can think of that will embrace all musics. Everything that people say is music, and everything that people use. It packets sound. It packets time through the use of sound. And that's it. Why do we like it so much? Why does every culture enjoy it and use it for important societal and religious rights, for personal and group entertainment? Every culture known to mankind does. And there are a lot of other things, too, that all cultures do. I find it, for example, interesting. You know what an octave is? An octave in the physical world, the objective world, means the doubling of a frequency. And in the musical world, we say, oh, that's the same note, but higher or lower, which is extremely subjective, because no one ever thinks about that, especially at the music school. But higher? You have to look up there to see that note, and the low note is down there? No. Is it larger and smaller? Well, quantitatively it is, because one has a larger number, 1,000 hertz as opposed to 10 hertz. But do you know why we say, by the way, one note is higher than another? Anybody know?
It's on the bar. It's on your, like, it's higher physically on the scale. Right?
Well, turn your scale upside down, and it won't be. Yeah. It's to say, I've heard people say, well, because it's higher on the piano. No, it's righter on the piano, lefter on the piano. Actually, the ancient Greeks would say 1,000 hertz is a low pitch and 10 hertz is a high pitch. And the reason is because they had their scale upside down. The primary instrument, once Pythagoras got finished defining the strings, was kithara. And the kithara is kind of like a progenitor of the guitar. It has a neck on it with a string like this. And look, when they play a high note, it's here. Then they play a low note, it's here. Right? We would hear dee 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 dee, doo 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 dee, right? Because the string is shorter now, and the string is longer now. But the hand is higher, the hand is lower. So they said higher and lower, opposite from us. So that's a societal convention, high and low. But here's something that's not a societal convention. This notion of octave. Every culture recognizes that an integer that a doubling of a frequency and consecutive doublings of frequency resulted the same note with different properties. In other words, all cultures recognize A440 as being somehow the same as A220 or A110 or A880. I don't know why. Well, I do. It has to do with the way our ear works, but still we're hardwired for these things. So I think that's interesting. Here's another interesting thing all cultures have. This is only discovered about 15 years ago.